This is the Venerable Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche seminar entitled Tantra, held at Naropa Institute in Boulder, Colorado. This is talk number 4, Energy, held July 22nd, 1974. This is an ARP digital remaster made May 2007.
This will be Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche at Naropa Institute, the summer of 1974. This is the Tantra class, the 4th lecture given on July 22nd.
The question of energy is starting point. We should discuss what do we mean by energy to begin with. When we talk about energy, in the ordinary sense, we talk about in terms of power, and the power in the sense that able to generate further power and some kind of stable, ongoing productivity that takes place. Like the energy in a powerhouse and a generator of electricity. That can distribute and redistribute all kinds of powers, energies, to constantly all over the place. We talk about a vigorous person who could generate enormous energy that he works hard, therefore his friends around him feels guilty of being idle, that they too had to do something about, and in turn they begin to work very hard because you feel there is a bank of energy happening, and one doesn't have to say that you be bad boy in your chore, washing up dishes, ironing sheets or whatever. But you begin to feel there is enormous energy there that you begin to pick on and being idle, and you begin to take part in that particular energy. Then there is another kind of energy, which is energy associated with self-existing energy. That you don't have to work with anybody. But it happens. Self-existing energy, which is a continuous energy. And it is difficult to track down such workings of energy. That energy is universal or pervasive. That energy happens by itself, naturally. Which is somewhat based on the notion of enthusiasm and the notion of freedom. Enthusiasm in the sense that there is a trust in what you are doing, and the notion of freedom in the sense that you are completely certain that you are not going to be discovered on the ocean. It takes place constantly. That energy comes out of having quarrel with your wife. That energy comes out of having severe accident, driving motor car. That energy that you be rejected in the seminary. That energy that is created, you fail to do something, and the energy that is created because you accomplished something. Somehow the rejection or acceptance by the world does not mean energy is valid or not valid, but there is transparent energy which takes place constantly, all the time. Whether you're in an appropriate situation in accordance with the law of the universe, or whether you are inappropriate in accordance with the law of the universe. But there is constant energy takes place. Usually energy takes place in some kind of execution of a decision, either by authority or by situational. The situation rejected you, accepted you, or authority rejected you, accepted. That there is a sense of accepted or rejected. There is a sense of enormous energy is taking place at the same time. That happens to us constantly. And that energy is what we call, from the Vajrayana or Tantric point of view, is the energy that exists. Not hard-working, washing up dishes constantly, or being extremely industrious, doing things, being busybody, or anything like that. But energy, what we're talking about at this point, is that kind of energy comes from all kinds of challenge, in the positive or negative sense. That kind of energy takes place constantly. This energy also goes a long way with the relationship of emotions to our relatives, our lover, and emotions goes a long way for our friends, enemy, philosophical belief that something is happening right according to your belief, something is going wrong according to your belief, some situations trying to throw you off your philosophical religious commitment, and some situations trying to suck you in, draw you in certain commitment. And all kinds of energies takes place. There is energy, in this case, what we are talking about in terms of energy, we are not talking about purely vigorousness, vigor alone, but we are talking purely in terms of that which exists within our life, that there is some kind of flint and metal sparking constantly again and again. There is rubbing against each other. That there is a phenomena world exists, you rub against or forward. There is that kind of spark takes place constantly all the time. When we talk about energies, we are talking about that notion of reality. According to the Tantric Buddhist tradition, we are talking about a realization of duality. That you exist, the others exist. Of course, both are false. But who cares about that, particularly at the time, anyway? But however, deceptive existence of you and other rub on each other. That sometimes you try to conquer the world, sometimes the other one tries to conquer the world. It's like riding on a balloon on the ocean. That sometimes the balloon rides on you, you are underneath the ocean. Sometimes you ride the balloon is underneath the ocean. So there's that big game is taking place constantly, tipping back and forth. It depends on your balance, but there is some electricity is taking place constantly. That's the basic notion of energy. What we are talking about is nothing particularly magical, miracle as such, but we are talking simply rubbing each other against phenomena world duality against duality. Me and other, usually. That's the basic point of energy that we're talking about. When we talk about energy, we're talking about a spark. We're talking about a fire. We're talking about real water, real earth, real air. And the real elements are working together with yourself. And at this point, we have no idea who you are, actually. But we're talking about just the basic you. Let's leave it vague at this point. That's going to get too much complication. But just leave it you as this vague stuff that exists somewhere or other in the middle of the cosmos. So, the question comes up, how we can handle or work, deal, utilize such energy. That has been questioned for a long, long time, all the time. 3,000 years and 2,500 years time that such question being asked. How we can handle that energy, how we can work with it. So fundamentally, basically, that question is question of duality, basic split. You and the other is taking place constantly. So whenever there's split between you and the other, that we try to unify by saying, I am good man. I am bad man. I am Joe. I am Mary. We try to bring them together in a very superficial sense, so that as if there's no energy exists at all, everything's going very smoothly. There's nothing to worry about the whole thing. Everything's going to be okay. I am Mary. That's smooth. There's no gap between the I and am and the Mary at all. And don't worry about that. And let's take it very easily, simply. And often people try to avoid by saying I am. You could say my name is Mary, Jack, Jill. But still we have a problem there, that smoothing out something. And they're trying to make everything presentable, respectable. It brings enormous problem, enormous question, raise further energy, in fact. At this point, that we turn ourselves into different areas of interest in the trying to define who you are not, whatever. That we have a split spiritual strategies that exist in our world, the theistic approach and non-theistic approach, both being a spiritual discipline. In the case of a theistic approach, that approach is to be made simply acknowledging that gap of dualistic concept, acknowledging rather than trying to conceal that. In the non-theistic approach, however, the problem has been that they're trying to completely conceal that particular gap. Some kind of spiritual democracy. You might say that is a part of the political social problem that exists, that blacks are not against white, but we all are to some species of human being. And for the very fact we live on the same earth, therefore we should regard us as a brotherhood. We have some features, whatever. But somehow the question goes back much more than that, much further than that, that's the kind of theistic approach, that let us have unity, let us have a real unity so that we can conceal this problem. We can iron out completely that there's no gap exist between the seams of your cloth that you're ironing on. Let us work in such a way that when you have ironed your sheet, that we can even conceal the seam. That in fact that the whole sheet is made out of big cloth rather than being sewn together. And that is the attempt is being made constantly. And that is the theistic approach, that God and you are one. God is in you, you are in God. You are eating a delicious meal. Let us say prayer in honor of God. We say our prayer, thanks to be God, what we are about to receive. Or properly I would say that, may the Lord be truly thankful for what we are about to receive. It's ironing out that He's also taking part in your meal, and He's the producer of the meal as well, so therefore we don't even swallow the food. It's all one, don't worry. It seems that it is possible at this point. There's a lot of room for deception in the theistic tradition of spirituality. And then a non-theistic one, which is much harsher and somewhat very skeptical and unyielding, somewhat outraged, I must say. We are still talking about energy at this point. Energy from the point of view of reality. And we are concerned about what is actually reality. Is reality as a gap or crack? Or is reality as a big sheet of cloth? Or pervasive? According to the non-theistic tradition of Buddhist Tantra, which I can only speak because that was my upbringing. And again, at the same time, I must say that's the best one. Because I know best. That when you begin to have a relationship with the world, that you do not have to try to make sure that the world is part of yours, particularly. The question of separation doesn't come along at all. I suppose basically the point is that according to non-theistic traditions, we could say that we don't believe ourselves as creatures, but we are some kind of being, or non-being for that matter. That we were never created, therefore we are not creatures particularly. And that there is a sense of continuity, nevertheless, without hysteria, without a panic, without congratulatory remarks or smoothing out anything at all. That the world exists, we are separate, of course, from that point of view, but so what? And let us take the separateness as part of the continuity at the same time. Rather than trying to deny that the black man is white man because created by the same creator, particularly. And then we get into all kinds of problems from that point of view. That there's a sense of continuity, a sense of openness, that there is a sense of oneness in the sense of zeroness rather than even oneness. That we are not talking about a oneness here, but we are talking about a zeroness. A non-existence barrier doesn't mean say that we are one particularly, but non-existence barrier which you could say we are all zero. This non-theistic approach to Tantra, again, from that same point of view, is that Tantra means continuity, thread that runs through life. That there is an invisible umbilical cord that goes through beginning to the end, and then that beginning is part of the end. So there is a complete circle which creates a mandala. The beginning is the beginning of the end is the beginning of the beginning. So there's continuation takes place all the time. Sense of continuity makes Tantra. That there is openness, that there is a thread that we could go through, experience, live through, experience through. Whatever dhatus involved, according to Buddha's term, or whatever perceptions, realms that you exist, sense perceptions or whatever exist, that you can work through. So quotient of energy from this point of view, it's a very simple one, extremely simple one. That energy is separate from you, therefore energy is part of you. Otherwise, such a separateness cannot exist without you. That's the dichotomy in the Buddhist logic, that you have a form and therefore you don't have a form. If you have to have a form, you can't have a form if you don't acknowledge or if you don't perceive, if you don't have a formlessness. You can't have a form. You can't exist if you non-exist. You exist because you don't exist. Such riddle is regarded as, according to the Buddha, as the truth. The question what we're discussing here is, by the way, different approach to separateness. We know that things are separate, therefore things are unified. And on the other hand, we know things are separate, therefore we don't like it, we should do something about it. I would say the first approach is the Buddhist approach, non-theistic approach, and the second approach is the theistic approach. The separateness doesn't exist, we should do something about it, having Holy Communion, trying to bring together. We don't quite like it, but we still try to make it the best of our abilities, what we can do about the whole thing. That has become an enormous problem, big problem, that we are not talking about the philosophies exist between the East and the West particularly, but I think we are talking about theistic traditions and non-theistic traditions, rather than the East and the West particularly. We are talking about different areas. We could hypothesize that Easterners think in a certain way, Eastern philosophy would say a certain way, and the Western philosophy says a certain way, certain way. And somehow that doesn't make any sense, because the world is not that divided in East and the West anymore, not at all, in fact. That the basic thinking of the East and Western process is always the same thing. The only problem that exists is the thinking style of ego and non-ego has become the biggest problem. Therefore, Buddhism happens to be the non-theistic religion, which is on the spot, this point. And that has been the problem. In fact, in many ways, a lot of leading Buddhist teachers who came to the West, a lot of leading Buddhist teachers who had a connection with its neighboring religions have been very coward and had been very hush-hush by saying that we better not tell them that we should keep quiet. We should make them interested in us first. And then we might tell them if they're up to it. And that has been the biggest problem, biggest mistakes. That the world hasn't seen enough color, enough interest, enough drama. That there's another area of spirituality which doesn't exist, a connection with the worshipping God, the Creator. Another spiritual approach which does exist, doesn't believe in God, a non-theistic process, non-theistic belief that actually speaks of spirituality, that nobody has even dared to say such thing at all, that we feel that is a problem, inadequacy, and a lot of spiritual teachers of Buddhist tradition have chickened out, which is not so good. Also, I've heard stories of Zen tradition that a lot of Zen masters and teachers refuse to talk about the idea of karma and rebirth because that's not particularly appealing subject in immigrant Zen masters who are coming into a theistic world. And the Tantra philosophizes by saying that we don't believe in any philosophy, any ideas, so let's believe in non-reincarnation or reincarnation, it's all the same. But you should go to sit, meditate, and then find out. That's good, maybe. But on the other hand, that the students find themselves working towards eternity, not knowing the birth and death circle of reincarnation is in process of impermanence, the message of impermanent, that you might achieve eternity one with God by sitting in your zazen practice, which is absolutely misleading. And we should look into that area as well. We should be aware of that differences exist, therefore ecumenicalism could come about because of the differencesness. When things are different, that's okay, because things are different. Fire's hot, water's cold. So what? They can still coexist. Fire could boil water into hot air, and the water could kill fire into water. We shouldn't be embarrassed about the functions of the universe. Energy. According to tantric tradition, energy is vital, important. We are approaching from purely psychological process, of course. If you don't have a mind, you don't exist. The world is out of your mind, created by your mind. Well, from that point of view, Energy, according to Buddhist approach, or that of Siddhi, according to Buddhist approach, Buddhist Tantra, that you don't have to depend on feedbacks, but you just relate with it as strict and direct as much as possible. You just direct to a situation, to a domestic world, life situation, or whatever happens. Enemy, friends, relatives, business partner, policeman, the government, whatever you have. Relate with energy, direct as much as possible, simply directing it. But directing does not necessarily mean directing outward as such, but directing inward at the same time. That there is a sense of decentralized process involved. I think that's one of the important points that I want you to understand and realize that you're taking this course in the Buddhist Tantra. We are not purely talking in terms of centralizing yourself, then making yourself little atom bombs, then exploding. But we are talking in terms of energies, spreading energy, opening. Energy becomes all pervasive, all everywhere, all and everywhere. That the problem with the centralizing energy in yourself, within one system itself, that you are asking for trouble. You find yourself like being a little baby snake who vicious and angry, but still little. Or you can find yourself as extremely passionate, horny little peacock. Baby peacock. And one finds oneself unable to relate with the spiritual practices. In fact, those demands are so explosive. And this point, when we're talking about, according to Buddhist Tantra, we're talking about openness or pervasiveness of energy. When we talk about this, we are talking about terms of decentralizing energy and sense of flood, ocean, outer space, the light of the sun and moon, that everything expands constantly, rather than making it to one little blockage, one little bomb. And the yogis or the yoga teachers, yogics of the theistic traditions have found themselves troubled and busy looking for outlet of some kind. That has become an enormous problem. That breeds enormous sense of charlatanism at the same time. When the instructors couldn't hold themselves up together, they had to find some way to say that what I'm doing is okay, I have to explode. There was a message, there was a teaching for you. You should accept me because I'm your teacher. And take it slowly, gently, but be kind to me. There is a lot of embarrassment happening from that point of view, which caused the students to lose faith in the teachings of the teachers at the same time. There's enormous problems happening with that at the same time. Well, I should stop this point, not saying too much. Maybe we could have a discussion period. If I say too much, it will be more contagious.
Rinpoche, the Buddha said to stop the outflows.
What is the what?
To stop the outflows. The definition of an arhat is one who has stopped the outflows.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you have said.
An arhat is said to be one who has stopped the outflows. Would you comment on that, please?
Outflows. Well, I think that is simply what we're talking about. Outflow, meaning what? Outflow in a sense of what for? What purpose?
That's my question.
That's it. What for? Why? That's open-ended question. If you look for outflow, are you expecting something in return or not? But possibilities that you let go, you don't expect anything in return. You gave, therefore you gave properly. Whatever comes back to you is fresh air.
You said that the non-theistic tradition is superior, and I fully agree with that. What puzzles me very much is what is the attraction of the non-theistic tradition to man? The history of man's love affair with God, according to the Freudian scenario, is one that comes out of his own experience, his relationship to his father or to his parents. And since usually parents disappoint the child in some way or other, you transcend them and posit a all-fulfilling parent meeting all your needs up above you in a divinity. So all this has a very good anthropological basis, the theistic thing. Now, when you come to the non-theistic, it's just this idea of the energies. I just marvel of how this was invented 3,000 years ago, when only today, in the realm of the high velocity particle physics, we have some idea of some glimmering of this world which your tradition describes so perfectly. Well, now comes this question to you. What is the fascination, or what is the attraction of the Tibetan or the Easterner to have this concept which denies his humanness, his personality? There is absolutely no payoff in the theistic sense.
Yeah. Well, we are not talking about the pure, what kind of feelings do people have in terms of public relations or advertisement level, particularly, and which will be much more appealing or industrialized. But we're talking in terms of what is actually happening. What's happening, it seems to be that there's a sense of relating with the authority has become a problem. And world is provided, God, world is provided to you with the television, and world is provided you with beautiful parents, lots of toys to play, automobiles. While you're flying an airplane, you have food to entertain yourself. The world has provided all kinds of entertainment so far to make you feel, so make sure that you don't feel bad, lonely, and there's all kinds of things. There's an announcement made while you're aboard an airplane. You say, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have comfortable flight, and call us if you need your help." And that's been happening. That's a theistic remark. That's been happening all the time. You ever notice this saying that how you handle yourself and everything. But the point of what we are trying to make here is that we can do otherwise, in a sense that probably this is completely unappealing to a lot of people who are used to their luxury. But however, it is a very truthful way of relating with the whole thing, is that no guidelines particularly, essentially no hospitality particularly, but you have to provide your own hospitality. And one has to work on yourself. One has to work on oneself at the same time. In the sense of real approach, that you're provided with all kinds of kit, K-ration food supplies, booklet, and you're furnished with your parachute. So off you go. Your parachute. If you end up on the top of a tree, make the best of it. If you end up in a gorge, try to make the best of it. But it is a non-theistic trip. And we can't do more than that for you. You have to make it better. Things out of yourself. Learn how to live in nature.
Last lecture you were talking about the 3 levels of mandala.
Last night?
Last lecture, whenever that was.
Yeah.
And you were speaking of the some kind of feeling of positive or negative. I got the impression that that's what sewed together the sense of mandala, that what you felt, what you rejected or accepted, defined your sense of the totality of the situation. And again tonight you were talking about rejection and acceptance as being some kind of sparking of energy. There are 2 things playing off against each other, some kind of yes-no thing happening of some kind. That's the best I can make out of it with my muddled mind. So I was hoping that you could illuminate that somewhat, if at all you said anything like that.
Illuminate?
Or exterminate or whatever.
Well, I think the question is good bananas. The question is the unity or uniformity. And one person is experiencing unity. That's very direct, extremely direct. But when we talk about uniform, that we are lost at the same point. I think what we're discussing tonight is a sense of experiencing separateness, because that you have experienced too much unity, as there's been said, too much by united. As much as we're living in the United States of America, there's a lot of united work, grand union of all kinds. It's become too much incorporated. And a lot of talk about unity has been said in the name of aggression. It has become a problem. So that in talking with the true Dharma, from that point, that realizing separateness of three types of world that we discussed the other night has become part of openness, that because we begin to see the separateness of things as they are, that saves from incest, that you are not making love to your universe constantly, but you are making love to your cosmic world at the same time. I don't think this particular answers your question, but maybe some kind of finger painting. Do you need something more to say?
Just if there's anything about the acceptance and rejection.
Saying the same thing. Acceptance is enormous rejection, and rejecting is enormous acceptance. Young lady in yellow.
You speak of God as an experience of going inward.
I beg your pardon?
You speak of God as an experience of going inward. But through experiences I have had of feeling open, perhaps on a sunny day when I'm swimming in the middle of a lake, or seeing a starry night, I can think of God as something which is separate but totally beyond me. And God, in that sense, makes sense. And so, isn't God also, I mean, can't you think of God as a word to express that which is beyond yourself?
We could. We certainly could, but why we do need that word? I mean, that's
Do you have a
become
better
problem.
word?
Well, I mean, we could say shit. Oh, magpie. Why that word particularly?
It's just convention.
Yeah.
All our words are conventions that convey a meaning that we all can understand.
Well, that has become a problem, and consequently we could say that very freely. But at the same time we find a word deceives us, you know. When there's some big thing happening to you, like what you said, you know, swimming or whatever, then we don't have a particular lover in our mind. Let's call it a God. Yeah, let's swim with a God, you know. That if you're alone in your bedroom you don't have anyone to make love to, let's just make love to God. I mean, that's a very private thing to say, but often things work that way with a lot of individuals. And particularly in the monasteries, in the Catholic tradition, that nuns are particularly married to Christ. They have to wear a wedding ring, and the monks are supposed to marry to Mary. And there's that kind of problem of have need for some kind of identification of something that becomes problematic. And relationship becomes very confusing. So if we could call anything, anybody, we could regard our cosmic principle as Om, Ah, or Hum, whatever you have, or rock, tree, water, fire, mosquito.
Those kind of experiences of feeling open lead to a sense of oneness, I feel, more than a sense of zero-ness. That everything is, and that everything has a oneness to it. Isn't this also a part of Buddhism?
Part of what?
Buddhism.
Yeah. Well, sure, naturally. But Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator, but maybe believe in the oneness or the zero-ness. But that's a different area altogether. Which are purely figures. Shiny-headed gentleman.
You said that when the situation reaches some kind of execution, either from the world or by authority, that a tremendous amount of energy is released. And the question arises how to work with that energy. My question is, in what sense do you mean work with the energy? Is it to be entertained by it, or to get rich by it, or to just do whatever you want to do with it at that point, or to work out the Dharma? What do you mean by work with the energy?
One just simply do it. How would you work with your bridge if you have to cross? Tell us. How can you work with your bridge if you have to cross that bridge?
You just do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, maybe we have to close our happening tonight, this point. Good luck.